WNBA is still a few months away, but the Indiana Fever have already been named America's team. So let's talk about it. What's up, you guys? I'm Rachel DeMita, and welcome to the Courtside Club. I'm not sure if you can see, but Sky is laying here on my desk, and she is just purring away. It's honestly the cutest little thing. So once again, more cats on the Courtside Club. I hope that you guys don't mind. But with that, I want to jump into today's video and give you guys some updates on the Indiana Fever. So the Indiana Fever's president of basketball and business operations, Kelly Krauskopf, I think that's how you say her name. She recently did an interview with Sportico, and there is so much good information in here, you guys. They kind of recap the Indiana Fever free agency, talk about a lot of things. So I want to go over some of the things that stood out to me in this interview. So if you guys didn't know, Kelly Krauskopf was the original president of basketball operations, and she was originally there from the start of the Indiana Fever team. So back in 2000 up until 2018, she is back there now, but she has been in the WNBA for a while. She has seen how the WNBA has grown over the past few years, and she has also been there with the Indiana Fever when they were a really good team. And she even noted that she was there when the Fever made 12 straight playoff appearances during her tenure. And so her plan is to get the Indiana Fever back to the place that it was at the beginning of their organization. So Sportico asked her, as you approach free agency and trades this offseason, how involved were the Fever's franchise players, Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell? And obviously, you guys, that is the big three in Indiana. I think all of us knew that going into free agency, those were the three players that would be protected. Those were the three players that weren't going to be going anywhere. As much as people were saying, oh, Kelsey Mitchell might not come back, I always, without a doubt in my mind, thought that she would be returning. Why wouldn't she be returning? But this is what Kelly had to say. She said, you always want to pick the brains of the players. I did it with DeMita Catchings and others. So I think it's smart business to inform some of your key players of some of the targets that we're looking at. It's not necessarily asking for their sign off. It's more of a let's talk about this together. She went on to say, and then we had eager players in our locker room now that wanted to be a part of recruiting, if you will, and talking to players to help bring them to Indianapolis. She said, every single player that we brought in, those were all intentional moves to add to what we see and what we envision as a successful blueprint. Now, Aaliyah Boston also did an interview recently where she was asked about this, and she talked about the fact that they were talking to the front office. And so it seems like, to me, I'm totally speculating here, but if you're reading between the lines, looking at all the different reports that were coming out, it seems like Caitlin Clark obviously had a big voice in which players they were bringing in. Aaliyah Boston had a big voice in what players they were bringing in, and Kelsey Mitchell also had that voice. There were also reports, like we talked about in other videos, where the Fever players said, please protect our locker room. And so even when some of the Fever fans were surprised, maybe by some of the signings, these players were in on these signings. These players wanted these new players to be coming in. We talk about Natasha Howard, we talk about DeWanna Bonner, we talk about Sydney Colson, we talk about Sophie Cunningham, we talk about Brianna Turner. These big three players were in on those decisions, and they seemed to be happy with what the front office was doing. Now, they went on to talk about the CBA negotiations and how that will impact roster management. And Kelly said this, she said, it's not unusual, we've been through it before, and I think everyone in the league understood that these were all going to be short-term deals and we'll be right back at it again. It was our opportunity to really put together a group of players that were pretty hungry to win, maybe to prove something for themselves as individual players, and that wanted to be here. Those were three important factors, knowing that once we get that going, we have a good season, we'll be able to track more players next year. And that has been a topic of discussion that has been brought up quite frequently in saying, like, okay, you're signing a DeWanna Bonner for just a one-year deal. Is the Indiana Fever only thinking of the now, or are they also thinking about the future? And to me, that has also not been such a red flag, because contrary to all the reports and the chatter online, I do think that the Indiana Fever is the number one free agency, is the number one destination throughout the WNBA. I don't understand why players wouldn't want to play in Indiana. I think the only reason that players might not want to play in Indiana, and I don't think it's a smart reason why, but the only reason why is if they are hell-bent on being the number one option for a team, because if you do come to the Indiana Fever, you're not going to be the number one option. That is just a fact. And if you're okay with that, then I think you can have a very successful career in Indiana, and there is going to be so many opportunities that open up for you just for the fact that you're playing for the Fever. If we look at DeWanna Bonner, for example, DeWanna Bonner has been in the league for 16 seasons. She has seen it all. She has been there when the arena isn't even halfway full. She has flown commercial her entire career, essentially. She's been an all-star. She's done all these things. She's number 4 top leading scorer in the WNBA. However, she has not reaped those benefits until recently. And now, even with her being on the Indiana Fever, she already has fans coming up to her crying because they are so excited for her to be joining the team. Like, the kind of love and support that she is now going to feel that she might not have felt for most of her WNBA career, that in itself, the brand deals that come on top of that, just because of the visibility that the Indiana Fever is going to have, all of these are just such a recipe that whether you're on a 1-year deal or not, I can't imagine these players not wanting to stay here. And that brings me to the next point in the article, where they talk about in January, the Fever announced a $78 million practice facility set to open in 2027. Kelly talked about, we've always had our own year-round locker room and strength and performance area, but we've outgrown it. We're not ashamed of what we have, but there's an opportunity to really grow and expand upon that. And what's fun is that the players can help be involved in some of the planning. We're going to be picking their brain on what goes into it. Now, $78 million practice facility, that's going to be the best practice facility in the WNBA. It's going to be state of the art. The players are going to be taken care of. And this is something, again, when you talk about a Natasha Howard and you talk about a DeWanna Bonner, players who are veterans in this league and who have been through so much, them wanting to go to a place where they feel taken care of, where they have all of these things set up for them. She went on to say the amenities that we're going to be offering, from lifestyle to basketball performance, training, and wellness, is going to be top of the line, and I think probably an experience that no other female athlete has had. And that is something that I've seen come up in multiple interviews and articles. The Indiana Fever is the destination, not only for women's basketball, but this is America's team. Like, this is the team. This is the team that everyone's going to have eyes on. And I want to talk about that. So Sportico asks, at your introductory press conference, you mentioned thinking about the Fever as like an Apple type company. I don't think you said the words America's team, but I got that sense. So what do you mean by that? Kelly said, there's this huge new generation of basketball fans that have come into our building and that have consumed the Fever. Only about 5% of our attendees went to a Pacers game, for instance. You guys think about that for a second. Only 5% of the people who are going to Indiana Fever games also were going to Indiana Pacer games. It used to be the reverse. It used to be 95% of the people going to WNBA games were already NBA fans because they were just hoops heads. You guys know what I'm saying. This is different. This is a whole new beast. This is a whole new fandom like we have never seen before, and we especially have not seen it in women's basketball. She said a third of our attendees were from outside the state of Indiana. We've got national reach, and once you know that, I mean, you can be America's team. I think there's a lot that goes into that. I don't take that lightly, but I think we have had attendees from 29 states around the country and a couple from around the world that came to Indiana to see our team, and we expect that to continue. Look, we're going to have a supply and demand issue, and they think they already do have a supply and demand issue, because you guys, full transparency, I was looking up courtside seats for one of the Indiana Fever home games. Firstly, I could not find a courtside seat that is like first row on the hardwood. All of the courtside seats are like second or third row or fourth row, and they're in such weird places. They're like behind the opposition's bench. They're also, because these are resale at this point, like $4,000 minimum a piece for a courtside seat that is like not first row. You know what I mean? It's hard to justify paying for a courtside seat when you're not on the hardwood, when it's that expensive. Like, those are tapping in to some NBA numbers when you talk about getting a courtside seat. Now, I'm going to keep looking, and I'm going to get myself courtside somehow at an Indiana Fever game this season. Like, we're going to figure it out. But a supply and demand issue. We have seen it. There was also just a report where the Indiana Fever will be playing at Iowa for a preseason game against the Brazilian women's national team, and 15,000 tickets sold out in under 45 minutes. Like, this is Taylor Swift type of voodoo Eras tour ticket sale things. Like, this is actually insane. Sold out in 45 minutes. So then Sportico asked about the ticketing strategy, and she said, we've just finished really with our renewals and our upgrades and seats. The waitlist for new season ticket holders is at an all-time high. Then the rest are just going to be single game tickets and very little group sales. In the old days in the WNBA, we sold a lot of group sales plans, and we just don't have room for that now. People want seats for the entire season. It's been just a really full turn from 2 years ago. Sportico said, at the league level, what are the biggest challenges you foresee in taking advantage of and continuing this trajectory? So Kelly said, we want to make sure that this isn't just one moment, that there's sustainability to the growth. I do think positive change has occurred with expanding the WNBA Finals to 7 games, giving your home fans a chance to see you at least once in a playoff series, and growing the season footprint to 44 games. The longer you're in the market, the longer you're playing, the more relevant in people's lives. There's more opportunity for your product and your players to be in the American sports landscape. I think that's incredibly important. And one thing that I just want to note here is that the Caitlin Clark effect is not dying. Like, I don't feel like we have seen a dip in just, how do I even put this into words? Just how much people care about Caitlin Clark, care about what she's doing. She has not touched a basketball court. We've seen one workout video from the Indiana Fever. We have not seen her play for however many months. People are still so tapped in and tuned into her life, tuned into the Indiana Fever, tuned into all the Indiana Fever's moves. Like, I felt like there was a moment in time, there was a week where all this free agency stuff was happening, and it was so exciting. And I cannot remember at any point in time where there was a moment like that in the WNBA where people were just locked in, like, what is this team going to do? Where is this player going to go? And they captured the fans during this offseason. And I feel like this second season, her second season in the league, the second year for the Indiana Fever when they're at this stage, it's probably just going to get bigger. They've already announced that the games played in Chicago are going to be played at the NBA arena. So they're already starting to move to different arenas when they go into these smaller cities. And I just don't see the Caitlin Clark effect, the growth of women's basketball, slowing down. So with that, I do want to mention that the Indiana Fever just put out a video, and it says everything you need to know about our transformative free agency. And if you guys aren't caught up on some of the players that they did sign, this video is 9 minutes long. I'm not going to react to it live here, but it does kind of give you a breakdown on the players that they've signed, what they're doing. But with this video, it kind of indicated to me that they are done in free agency. I think that's it. We're not going to see any more moving parts. And I think at this point in time, it's just going to be who they draft, who's going to end up making roster, and how this season is ultimately going to shake out. I do, however, want to put out a word of caution for Indiana Fever fans. I know that I have been one of those people who has been saying that the Indiana Fever are now in the contention category. But if Indiana does not make it to the finals this year, if they don't win a championship this year, this isn't a bust of a season. I think that there is so much that goes into these teams. And yes, they have put together some phenomenal pieces to surround Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston. And this video in itself kind of explains why they chose the players that they did. And they talk about defense, and they talk about, expanding on the wing, and they share all the accolades of all of these players. But there has definitely been a narrative now. It's like, oh, they're winning a championship. It's now or never. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. It doesn't mean that this team is a bust. There's also something to say about putting a bunch of players together that are maybe all good players on paper, but chemistry is definitely a thing. And we don't know at this point, because the team has changed so much, we don't know how these pieces will work together. It seems like it's going to work. Everything looks great, but you just don't know until they start playing. So I don't want there to be, like, I can just see it now. If they start off the season and they lose a few games or whatever, just alarm bells ringing and people going crazy. This is such an exciting team. Let's see how they do. Let's see how they weave in. You still have teams like the Minnesota Lynx who have been together for a while. You still have teams like the Liberty who have been together a while. You have a team like LA, who I think is going to be really good this season, but they're going to have that same thing. Like, how do they get their chemistry going? That's just one kind of word of caution, something that I wanted to say, because I see a lot of Fever fans online just being like, oh yeah, it's over for all of you. And it might be. It might be. They might win a ring this year, and I know that the Indiana Fever organization is going in win now mode, but nothing is guaranteed. We have to see how it all shakes out. With that, you guys, let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. How do you think they did during free agency? Do you think that the Indiana Fever have become America's team? Will you be going to any games this year? Let me know in the comments below. Of course, thumbs up this video if you enjoyed it, and click that little subscribe button because we upload new videos every single week. And with that, I can't believe Sky is you're still on my desk. From me and Sky, we will see you next time. Ooh, and ah.
You want some belly rubs? You're so cute. Bye.